if you have a line here, it begins right there, and it goes this way, expands towards infinity, alright? You'll realize something now. And that is, if it began here, what does that mean? It means that when you regress back in time, alright, you're going back in time, regressing back into the beginning point, you cannot regress past this singularity point. Alright? Because that's where you began. Beyond that, you have zero time, zero space, you have nothing. Nothing. Nothing is the absence of time. Over here, you have -1, -2, and -3, and so on. Over here, you have the beginning point, and you create your line this way, towards infinity. So, it always has a beginning point. So, that's finite, meaning it has to be caused into existence, the Big Bang. It has stage 1, nanosecond, 2, 3, 4, and then it moves on to days, and then it moves on to months and to years, okay, and so on into infinity, to the present day and beyond. So as you can see, right here you have the Big Bang, very first line, into infinity, expands this way. You cannot transcend and regress past this point, 1 nanosecond. When you take it back, the expansion goes backwards into the point where it began. Obviously, where does it end? Here. It ends at a finite point where it began. A lot of people, what they try to do, make you believe that it transcends this way beyond zero time, which is nothing, the absence of time, space, zero time, and it transcends into zero, past zero, and goes into these negative numbers. Okay? These mathematical multiples of -1, the square root of -1, these are imaginary numbers. And these are just used for mathematics. In the real world, they don't exist. How is that possible? Think about it. If you have, for example, you cannot have 0 here, -1, -2, -3, and so on to infinity. This is 0 space. This is nothing. And nothing is also the absence of time. Absence of time. Alright? So, in this 0 stage, before 1, number 1, right there, the singularity point, that's 1. Not -1, not 0, not nothing, not the absence of time. So, if you begin here, that's your real number. That's where your real number begins, right there, right here. That's 1 nanosecond. 2 minutes, and it progresses into hours, 3 hours, and expands towards days, and it expands towards years, and so on, into infinity. Alright, so the very first one is a nanosecond, let's say. So, right here, that's the beginning stage of the line. You cannot create an eternal line on both sides. One is infinite, and one is finite, right here. That has a beginning automatically. That's 1. Real number. 1 is before 0. 0 implies space, the absence of time, and nothingness. Alright? So you cannot regress back in time, years, back into months, back into days, back into minutes, and back into seconds, and finally back into 1 nanosecond. And then you cannot transcend and regress past 1 nanosecond into 0 time. And then head this way into infinity that way. You can't. Why? Because you can't begin anything over here in this stage. Anything beyond that is imaginary, beyond -1, and so on. Alright, so you can have 1 and extend this way into infinity. Here's your 1 nanosecond. 1 nanosecond. Alright? Right here. Remember that point. What happened before 1 nanosecond? 0. So you cannot have 1 without 0. You cannot have 2. In this case, let's make this a minute, because it's getting bigger. 2. You cannot have 2 without a point reference of 1. You cannot have 1 without a point reference of 0. That's where it stops. Because again, you're dealing with real numbers. Anything along this line all becomes imaginary numbers.